Hey, what's going on, everyone? So I wanted to cover a few more concepts, get a little deeper into the weeds following our last video. And a lot of this is probably going to be a review of some concepts we've already covered, but I want to touch on those one more time. So first and foremost, once again, the comments throughout our code are going to be very, very important, and certainly important in our assignments. So make sure that you comment everything in your code, explain what's going on, explain what everything is for, and so on and so forth. So as I've mentioned before, if you think that you have too many comments in your code, add 3 more lines. So once again, we have our include statement, which defines the library of commands that are going to be available in this particular program. So in this case, stdio is a standard input output, and that carries functions such as printf and scanf and so on and so forth. And I've provided information on where to find all those H files. So, and once again, we have global variables that will be available to all functions, which means that they will be available in the main function here, and then in the calc year function below. So those are available to all functions in the code. And now in this case, only have 2, but in many cases, a C program will have many, many functions. So this is one important note that I need to make, and I believe that I've made this in the last video. But when we are using functions, sub-functions aside from main, we need to make sure that we define those functions as prototypes up above main. And that will be required in every case. So make sure that you include that in the code that you're writing for this class. So we have a couple of new concepts that we're going to cover. Actually, they were covered last chapter, but I'm going to get into some more details on those. One is the while loop, and then the if then else loop. But so this code is effectively doing the same thing that we had before. So now one difference that I want to point out is that I've created a constant variable here, which, if you remember, this this line of code also created a constant called drinking age with a value of 21. Now this is just another means of creating a constant. Now they do behave a little differently in C code, and for the context of this class, we'll consider both of those as means of creating constant values, or constant variables rather. So then we basically have the same code, and again we comment everything. So we have the instruction going out to the user, enter the user's name, and then we have a scanf to allow the user to enter the user's name. Now, once again, I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. You can only use one scanf per value coming in from the user. Don't try and do multiple values with a single scanf function. So the first scanf brings in the user's name, the second brings in the user's age, and then we have an if-then loop, or I'm sorry, an if-then statement, which basically says if current age is greater than or equal to drinking age, which we know based on the constant up above is 21, we're going to print out you're already old enough to drink. And below that we have an else statement. So if this condition results in a true condition, then the contents of that if statement, the then statement will execute. If it is false, we'll go down to the else and execute the contents of that else statement. So in Yep, okay. And then below that, we have a for loop. So now this is the for loop is a very very important tool, and you'll learn to use that through the class. So effectively, what we're doing now, if you notice, we have up here a an integer value defined called count that I've defined as a global variable. And now, in this case, we definitely could have created that as a local variable within the main function. So basically, what this does, the contents of this for loop has three sections. The first part will set the value to that variable. In this case, it's a 0. And then the middle part is the test condition. So it's going to test the contents of that variable against some other value. So in this case, it's current age, which was entered up here by the user. And then the last part is some action on that variable. So in this case, we increment the variable by 1. So and then so if this part is true, so count is 0. So count is definitely less than current age, considering the user entered something higher than 0. We're going to actually, even if they entered 0, we're gonna enter this for loop once, because it's less than or equal to. So it's equal to 0. We're going to go in and print out the this line with the values in there. It's going to sleep for 1 second and print it out. So we'll see that here in just a second. So one point that I want to make, notice that that this statement, this count plus plus, basically what that's doing is doing the same thing as count equals count plus 1. So that's just a shorthand way of doing that. So keep that in mind when you're writing your code and doing some basic arithmetic. And then beneath that, we have a while loop, which takes the count variable, which if you see up here has already been used in this loop, and as long as it is greater than 0, is going to print the count is, and it will show you what the value of count is, and then it's going to decrement or subtract 1 from that value, and again it's going to sleep for 1 second. And it's going to loop through that until it gets down to 0. So, in that I haven't changed anything on the exterior function. So let's take a look at this real quick and see what we can do here. Now, you may recall that I prefer not to use IDE 1. I mean, it's an okay tool, but the tool on Tutorials Point is actually pretty good. So let's take a look at that. And we will compile that code. And then now this is a basic Linux operating system. So if you do an ls minus L, it will show you what you have in that particular directory. So in this case, we have main, which is the executable, and then main.c, which is the source code. So we'll go ahead and run the main program and enter your name, which is Tony. And if I enter, we'll say 18, notice what it does. It says Tony's 18 years old and will be 21 in 3 years. And it goes into that for loop, and it counts from 0 up to 18. And then it goes to the while loop. And you notice that it doesn't print out that extra stuff. It just prints out the count is, and it counts down. So let's run that again. And this time we'll use 3 to make it a little shorter. But I want to point something out. Notice that I set that value to 3. So this value of cur age is 3. So why does that go to a value of 4 before exiting? If somebody can tell me that, I'd really appreciate that. Let me see. So a couple of other quick points that I want to make is that there's, as you've read, there is a difference between keywords and identifiers. So keywords are things like Const, which is forms a constant, and other keywords in C that are defined in the text. But the point is that you cannot use a keyword as a variable name. So just make sure that that you are careful of that. If you use variable names that are more meaningful to what function it's performing, then you shouldn't have any problem. And I believe I mentioned this in the last video, but formatting is very, very important. So notice that inside our main function, everything is indented to the right. And then inside each control function, inside the main function, the contents of that that device is indented further. So that is going to carry weight in the assignments. So make sure that that your code is formatted appropriately, and we should be good to go. So as always, if you have any questions about this content or anything else, please let me know, and I appreciate it.